Welcome back. I'm Al Rochelle, joined right now by the Tampa Bay Times political editor, Adam Smith, who will introduce our guest. Adam, good to see you, buddy.
You too. Thanks. We were lucky to have Congressman Dennis Ross. Thanks for being here.
Thank
Republican from Lakeland.
Yes, sir.
Big news in this neck of the woods, the new Florida Polytechnic.
Yes.
What's the view? Is this a good thing, and what do you think of the process?
Well, I think in the long run, having the STEM facility, the Polytechnic brand there in that beltway right there on the I-4 corridor is absolutely going to be good for economic development. It's going to be great for Florida. How we get there was the point of difference that created the divisiveness. Now that we know it's law, I say we support it, we make it happen, and we do everything we can to see that this institution does as much as it can to make sure it provides those high-tech
Does the average man and woman on the street in Polk County, were they supportive of this, or were they nervous about it? What was the view?
Well, I think it was split right down the middle. I think you had some people in the business community that saw it as wonderful economic development. You saw some others who said, well, but if we go away from USF, then what are we going to do with the students that are there? What are we going to do with the faculty that are there? What message are we sending to the rest of the world if they want to come teach here or go to school here? We've got to show some stability. It's been settled. It's resolved. Now let's move forward, and I think we will.
The other big issue that's getting a lot of talk is in Sanford with the Stand Your Ground law.
Yes.
I realize that's a state law, but ultimately this stuff filters up to the higher level with the president even commenting on it. Where are we with that? Do you think the Stand Your Ground law is good?
Well, I think it's absolutely necessary that a person be able to defend themselves without having to retreat, especially if they're in their own home or in fear of their lives. The Stand Your Ground law has been adopted throughout the country in various ways by various states. I think it's necessary to have a defense of stand your ground. We'll see how the court interprets this. The facts of this case are so sketchy.
Yeah.
You know, it's one person's word against nobody else. You know, and that's Mr. Zimmerman. We won't know what the facts are until the trial takes place, and then whether he can substantiate what he says actually happened, or whether there be some evidence to the contrary. That will test the Stand Your Ground law. And I think that needs to be played out before we can really take a judgment on whether we need to change the law as it is.
We're going to be, over the next 200 days, hearing Democrats throttle Mitt Romney, throttle the Republican Party over the Ryan budget plan, saying raising taxes on cutting taxes on the wealthiest, slashing health programs, Pell Grants, etc. You're in a safe district, but is it hard for you to go and justify that when you go home supporting that plan?
Well, we have to support something that takes seriously the economic deficit that we have in this country. We're going to have for 3 years in a row well over $1 trillion deficit. And that's absurd. It's unsustainable. We have to make changes. The Ryan budget at least addresses these issues. Is it the right path? Probably not. I think instead of talking about tax reductions, we have to talk about tax reform. We have to get rid of all these exemptions and credits and go more to a flat tax. We need to make sure that we take care of those people who have to put into Social Security so that it will be there for them 20, 30, 40 years from now. We need to make sure that Medicare is doing what it was intended to do, and that's to take care of those who desperately need to have that health care. But we're kind of just all sitting back saying everything's bad and nobody seems to want to get behind the bandwagon of solutions. And so that's why I think this 2012 election is going to be so important.
Does it make sense, given our deficit, that millionaires would see their taxes cut by $265,000?
If what you're talking about is the Buffett rule that was voted down last week in the Senate, look, it's only going to raise about a day and a half of revenues to address the deficit. What we have to do, we have to talk tax reform. You know, 47% of households who don't pay taxes that are earning income ought to start paying something. Do I believe that people should pay more? I believe everybody should pay some. And I think that's what we have to address. We've created this system that we're trying to now villainize those who do well and take care of those who we're not giving the opportunities to do well. One thing I will tell you about our tax structure is that no matter what, over the last 80 years, the tax rate has been, it's all a function of economic growth. If we don't grow our economy, we're not going to see the revenues we need. We're at 14.5% of GDP right now is the revenues we're taking in. We're spending at 24%. What we need to do is grow our economy. If we can get back up to the average of 18%, we can control our debt and our deficit, but we have to grow our economy.
Why doesn't anybody seem to be willing to take at least a baby step and start in that direction? The Social Security Administration came out this week and basically said, we're still in trouble. We don't see any solution. After 2036, the money could be gone.
And that's one of our easiest problems to solve is Social Security, because that can actuarially be done. We can make some changes to the law that over time puts us back on course. First of all, we've got to stop robbing from it. I mean, let's face it, we've used the Social Security Administration Trust Fund for funding all kinds of purposes that Congress should never have taken the money for. It should be there for one reason, and that's to take care of those.
The word lockbox really doesn't exist, does it?
It does not exist. These are IOUs that we put in there. We've got to be very, look, we've got an approval rating that might be around 10%. The American public are craving credibility in their members of Congress. You may not agree with me or what my plan may be, but at least let me have a plan. I think that's what the American people are saying. Show us a plan. Show us how we get out of there. And we're not there yet. We're still in a divide of partisanship, and unfortunately that's the system. But I think all more the reason we need to have an election in 2012 to see where the American public want us to take this country.
We may see the health care overhaul overturned by the Supreme Court,
yes,
tossed out. Then what happens? What's the Republican alternative?
The Republicans need to be at the forefront with a plan. Symbolically, we repealed Obamacare, if you will, when we first got elected last January. But yet we've done nothing to replace it. We need to replace it. I think the interstate sale of health insurance plans would be wonderful. That would involve competition. People could choose what is necessary for them because they don't need in vitro fertilization, or they might not need whatever care, only catastrophic care. We need to be ready as Republicans in the House with a plan that we can put over to the Senate come this June, come this July, that in the event the Supreme Court does declare that mandate unconstitutional, we have something in place.
I don't sense the party is getting ready for that. Are they?
Well, I think our party is still trying to adapt to the fact that we're in the majority.
Right.
And I mean that somewhat facetiously, but also somewhat seriously. You know, we got beat up over messaging. The payroll tax cut that got defined as the middle class tax cut did nothing to stimulate the economy, did nothing to increase jobs, only took $80 billion out of the Social Security Trust Fund, which was contrary to what I believe as a Republican, but yet we didn't stand up and say, no, this is wrong, let's do it the right way, let's do real tax reform. Instead, we let the message take hold of us, and we've accomplished nothing. The sequestration, the increase in the debt ceiling that we had last August. You know, we as Republicans who ran on let's reduce our debt, let's spend within our means, and I voted against that debt ceiling. Now all of a sudden we're looking at an automatic sequestration, which means an automatic reduction in Department of Defense and Medicare come January if we don't do anything to change it. And I don't see it on the horizon that we're going to do anything to change it.
We find out that when people vote for the president, one of the most crucial things, believe it or not, is not the policy, it's whether they like the guy. Yeah. And because the economy is starting to turn around, more of these so-called swing states seem to be coming back around to the president's side of the matter. Why don't people, in quotes, like Mitt Romney?
Well, I think, you know, I like Mitt.
Okay.
But I think it also has to do with how his messaging comes across. Mitt has been very successful. He comes from a very successful family. His father's past governor of Michigan. He was governor of Massachusetts. I think people have a harder time relating to somebody who has been as successful as him. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, given time, I believe that Mitt will be successful depending on who he surrounds himself with and who will help be his advisors to address some of these situations.
Are you confident if he's president he will be a true conservative?
I think he'll be significantly more conservative than our president is today.
That doesn't say much, though.
And on that, we've run out of time. Congressman, thank you for stopping by. Thank you.
A pleasure.
Coming up when